Now to the craft, looking at the directing, cinematography, and the vibe of the overall picture. One thing that many great directors do is they'll make a city or landscape a character in the movie. Mann does this in a way with LA that few directors are able to. I grew up in New York, so I'm no stranger to big cities, but Los Angeles always felt more impersonal to me. Not just compared to New York, but to many other metropolises that I've actually been to. I think Mann captures this in the best way possible, showing a large, busy place, but also a feeling of emptiness and a kind of perpetual level of disconnection. The big freeways, large neighborhoods, and large skyscrapers are clearly full of people, but is there actually any humanity there? Let's have a look at a scene in the film which probably hasn't been the most reviewed in the picture, but clearly shows what Michael Mann was driving at. In this particular scene, Neil's whole crew and their families are having dinner together. We touched on this scene earlier when talking about Tom Sizemore. Now let's look at it through a different lens. Right off the bat, it's shocking as it's basically a company dinner. Just these men who don't have 401ks or pension plans, but are world-class criminals, but they love their wives and they love their kids, and they're loyal as can be to one another. There's even a great line when Tom Sizemore gives his wife a gift. The wife is as emotional and happy as can be. And De Niro, in a light-hearted and amusing way, says, "Just don't ask him where he got it." Everybody laughs, but now we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that everyone's wives are aware of what their husbands do for a living. And at that particular moment of the film, it kind of seems to be no big deal. In this scene, the men and their families are at a busy restaurant. But the way Michael Mann and his cinematographer Dante Spinotti shot the scene, you can barely see the faces or any other important characteristics of anyone else in the restaurant. Now naturally, part of this is a stylistic choice. In a scene like this, it makes sense to shoot with a shallow depth of field as you're focusing on your characters. But it almost feels like the rest of the restaurant doesn't matter. As a comparison, if you have a look at this scene from Goodfellas, this is one of the most famous in cinematic history. You can see here the director Martin Scorsese and his cameraman Michael Ballhaus are clearly focusing on Ray Liotta and Joe Pesci and the rest of the gangsters in their crew. But you're also well aware of the other patrons in the restaurant, almost like the characters in Goodfellas live in a community. But in Heat, they don't. I know this may feel like a lot of attention placed on a 60-second dinner scene, but this is where we see the level of attention to detail in this film. My father, who was a director and editor, used to say, this was a movie that was made with care. And this is the moment to talk about the man behind the camera, Dante Spinotti, an Italian cinematographer who Mann would go on to use repeatedly throughout his career. Last of the Mohicans, The Insider, and of course, Heat. It's not hard to understand why Mann continued to collaborate with Dante. Spinotti has a gift that very few cinematographers possess. He has the ability to make darkness feel alive. Most DPs light a scene to eliminate shadow. Spinotti does the opposite. He uses shadow as a storytelling tool. Every dark corner in Heat feels intentional. Every pull of light feels earned. As a cameraman myself, I can tell you that this is genuinely difficult to achieve consistently across a 3-hour film. What Spinotti and Mann created together is a visual language that's completely unique to this film. You could take any single frame of Heat, put it on a wall, and you'd be looking at a photograph. That's the hallmark of a truly great cinematographer working with a truly great director. The disconnected landscape continues for the rest of the film. Here, when Vincent goes to see his CI, or confidential informant. Here, when Neil is being briefed on the bank job. Even the scene when he first has a drink with Edie at her house overlooking LA. And speaking of that scene with Edie, here's a piece of film trivia that you will appreciate. That stunning Los Angeles skyline twinkling behind Neil and Edie on the balcony is not entirely what it appears to be. Mann and Spinotti faced a problem that any cinematographer who has shot night exteriors will recognize immediately. Film stock in 1995 simply could not simultaneously expose correctly for the actors' faces and capture the depth and detail of a city lit up at night behind them. The technology just didn't exist yet. What was Mann's solution? Well, he shot the actors separately and then used a digital composite of the cityscape behind them in post-production. This is one of the earliest uses of digital compositing in a major Hollywood film. Here's why that matters. Mann is so committed to that specific image he saw in his head that the exact feeling of two people suspended above a cold and indifferent city, that he pioneered a technique to achieve it rather than compromise on the shot. That obsession with the image is what separates Michael Mann from almost every other director working in Hollywood at the time, and that specific frustration, not being able to capture a night cityscape on film, is what drove him to be one of the first major directors to fully embrace digital cinematography on his film Collateral. Even the limitations of his tools became a doorway to something new. This brings us to another style choice that is also a skill set of Michael Mann. The SOB can shoot at night like no one else. The shooting at night, whether it be in Thief, Collateral, Miami Vice, even Last of the Mohicans, and of course Heat, gives us another window into the world of the characters. I'm sure your grandmother or some other old wise person once told you, no good decisions are made after 2 a.m. Well, when you have a movie where a good portion, if not all of it, is filmed after sundown, we know there's going to be some trouble in the near future. Filming at night, especially in a city like Los Angeles, makes everything feel a bit more on edge, a bit more primal, like the predators have come out to feed. With the extraordinary craftsmanship of Dante Spinotti, all the night scenes have a sort of 1930s film noir gangster vibe, kind of feeling like James Cagney could just appear on screen at any moment. Looking at it now, it blows the mind of how good this film actually looks, especially considering that it was shot on actual film stock. Nowadays we take for granted how digital cameras have made it so much easier to film at night.